of like how would you rank these wide receiver targets that the Jets could go after? Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Calvin Ridley, and Michael Pittman. Those are the five.
Yeah, so I think each one is unique, right? And Adams is, I think, everybody's kind of top favorite because of his history with Rodgers and because he's just like kind of sneaky been one of the best receivers for the last 7, 8 years. Um, and his brand of football, the way he plays is so exciting. Like it's that he's an exciting football player. And he's kind of been out in Siberia for a couple of years now. And so like the storyline element of it all is really exciting with Devontae Adams. Mike Evans, I think like Mike Evans is due some flowers because, he's had some highly visible drops. And so I think he has this reputation as like, he's like stone hands and whatever. And I think that kind of, that obscures what has been an insane career. Like the guy is potentially one of the best to ever do it. He's got 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Like he's an animal. He's an absolute animal. And it kind of gets lost because of a few pretty highly visible drops that he's had. And so I think, he's due some credit for the things he's accomplished. T. Higgins, I love T. Higgins, but he disappears for stretches, and I don't know why. Like, I don't fully understand it. And it hasn't just been without Burrow; it's been with Burrow too. Like, they drafted Jamar Chase right after they drafted T. Higgins, and so that was like the first head scratching. And maybe it's just that you wanted two great receivers, right? And every time T like does put something on tape, it's always great. He just seems to disappear sometimes. Ridley, kind of a similar story, but to a worse extent. Like I was big on Calvin Ridley coming into this year. Like he had the whole, the episode with the mental health in Atlanta and then the gambling suspension. And he was kind of out of everybody's eye for a year or two. And then it was like, okay, Trevor Lawrence is on the come up. This team's getting better. Jacksonville's the odds on favorite in that division this year. Calvin Ridley's going to go nuts, and he would just vanish for like large stretches of time this year. And that's like a little bit hard for me to wrap my head around and explain. And then Pittman, kind of just like a picture of consistency among a really unstable Indianapolis quarterback position for the last 4 years. Like he just kind of does what he does. He catches passes over the middle. He's tough. He gets blasted all the time because he's getting hung out to dry by quarterbacks. And he just kind of comes back and he does it again and he brings his lunch pail. And so if I had to rank him, I would say if we're talking about like 2-year window win with Rodgers, which that's what we are talking about, right? It's Adams and Evans kind of at the top, with Adams with a slight edge just because of his history with Rodgers. I think they bring a different element. Adams is more like having kind of two Garrett Wilsons out there, where Evans would be what we were hoping Lazard was going to be. And I don't mean that Lazard was ever in the same conversation as Mike Evans in terms of skill. I
Glad you
just mean,
clarified.
yeah, just in terms of like body type and like what they can do, right? Like contested catches, bodying people, blocking, like that kind of thing. They're not in the same league, but Evans is a much, much, much better version of that. So we could kind of fill that role. And then after that, I think the next three guys are more kind of like long-term building. Who are we going to pair with Garrett Wilson longer term? And out of those three, I think I'm going Pittman first, then T. Higgins, then Calvin Ridley, just because of like the uncertainty. I think Calvin Ridley's got a great skill set. Just like, why are you disappearing for long stretches of time? And to a much lesser extent, similar concern with T. Higgins. So like, I would like Pittman's stability and just kind of show up to work and do the right thing more than anything else, because we already have like the talented guy who just disappears in Lazard. Like I don't want to mess with any more of that. Like I'll just take the guy who I know I can rely on even when the quarterback position's unstable. So I think like final ranking, I'm going Adams, Evans, Pittman, T, Ridley. How about you?
Yeah, we have very similar rankings. The only ones that I flopped were I have Evans above Adams, solely because not a talent thing. It's just like, I said free agents plus
Yeah,
one. Adams is
compensation.
the plus one. Like we we'd have to give up stuff to get Adams. And I know this is a 2 year window, but like there are, like I said, great options as of right now still out there where you don't have to give up anything. So that's what gave Evans the nod to me. Um, I also have Ridley above T only because like I hear what you're saying about the stretches of disappearance. I just think Ridley is the more talented player. I
Yeah.
value Pittman's consistency, his ability to do it with like Gardner Minshew of all people is very telling. So that's where he gets the nod at 3. But in between Ridley and T, like I took Ridley in fantasy. I got sold on the hype. I saw the stretches where like 1 week he would put up 25 points, the next week it would be absolutely nothing. So like I get it, the disappearing act. I wonder how much of that is due to the rhythm of playing a full NFL season for the first time in 2 years or whatever it was. And so if I'm going to bet on a guy, especially since, like you mentioned, the bottom 3 options are way more long-term investments than an Adams or an Evans, given their age. So if I was going to bet on those 3 guys, I would bet on, and I keep saying bet with Ridley, but Pittman 1, Ridley 2, and T3 for my bottom third of that tier. One name that we did not mention was Odell Beckham Jr., and we'll end on this
Mm.
before we wrap. Uh, I don't have him in that top 5. I would take all 5 of those guys before him. And it kind of seemed like he didn't really want to play for the Jets either. If you've been listening to him, what are your thoughts on OBJ in this conversation?
Yeah, heavy agree that he's nowhere near this top 5. I wonder if he has ever had a season where he's provided more value on field than the detraction that he is kind of
Rookie
off the
year,
field with all the weird
rookie
stuff he
year
does.
OBJ.
Rookie year was good and he had to catch, and then like since then, dude, like what have you done? Like you've gotten hurt a bunch of times. You're kind of always in and out of the lineup, and it feels to me like the reputation far outweighs the actual production. And all those quotes this week about like, oh, I was definitely signing with the Jets. I was talking to somebody about taking their number. I was having those negotiations, and then the Ravens told me I can't leave. And um, I thought a couple things based on that, right? Like number one, I wouldn't do it with OBJ, but as far as the attitude of a front office, like it must be nice to be the Ravens and just be like, no, you're signing this contract before you leave or the contract's off the table. Like to have that kind of juice in a negotiation and to throw that weight around, God, that must be nice. And I hope we can get there at some point. And it's frustrating that and I think Douglas like wants to be that. He does that like we're not gonna overpay somebody to come to the Jets just because we're the Jets thing. Like, cool, man. That's a great thought. Problem is that you have to because we are the Jets. And until you change that, you're gonna have to do that. And so yeah, everybody gets mad about it when it happens. Like everybody flipped out about CJ Mosley, but here he is. We got a good player. Did we overpay him? Probably, but we got a good player for a bunch of years because we overpaid for him. So I like that attitude from the Ravens front office. The other thing I thought of was flip it, right? Let's say he signs with the Jets and we are the 1 seed in the AFC. Rodgers never gets hurt, parallel universe, everything's great for us. We're the 1 seed in the AFC. And Beckham signs with us. And the week before we're about to play our first playoff game, he goes on a podcast and starts talking about other teams and how he was going to sign with other teams. We would be livid. We'd be flipping out if he was going on podcast talking about his offseason contract issues the week before a playoff game, right? Like it's the boat thing. It's he can't I have no idea why he would do that. And as soon as I saw that quote, I was like, man, I'd be pissed if I were a Ravens fan. What is he doing? Right. And again, I don't want to be a no fun guy. I don't want to be a don't have a life guy and don't do your thing. Just like don't do it the week before a playoff game. What are you doing? And so no, I don't want anything to do with OBJ. He's nowhere near this top 5, and I don't want to touch him in the offseason.
Yeah, there's better options. The OBJ boat has sailed, to put it in proper terms. Awesome. Well, Paul, any final thoughts before we wrap this?
No. Should be some good championship games this weekend. Like I think everybody's we've seen the Chiefs in 6 straight AFC championships. So loyalties aside, I think a lot of people would like to see Lamar win, but I think it's going to be an awesome game either way. Like to see those two quarterbacks square off is going to be amazing. And then on the other side, it's like not really super quarterback led teams. Like the other side is more kind of about the head coaches, right? And two like kind of great up and coming head coaches. I think he's got the blow it gene in him. So I'm curious to see how that one plays out and how Campbell does on the big stage and all that stuff. But should be an awesome weekend and looking forward to some more football.
Yeah, I mean, every Jets fan should be rooting for Detroit because if they can do it, so can fucking we. And it's all about getting the right guy in there, hitting on your draft picks. Their draft class from this last year is looking insane. And so,
Yeah.
like, all it takes is one draft. All it takes is the right guy at the head coach, and us two could be playing in a championship game. So here's hoping for that. Let's go Detroit. Let's go Travis. And we're excited for some awesome, awesome AFC and NFC championship football. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode answering some Discord questions. And we'll keep you guys posted on when you can expect that QB docu series to launch coming from me and Paul in this off season on the pod. Thank you guys again so much for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.